Hello, and welcome to the Tifo Football Podcast. I'm Joe Devine, and today I was delighted to be joined by Mengem and Martino Simcik from Copa 90, who both participate in making the Derby Days series that you may have seen on YouTube. It's on the Copa Stories channel, or its new home is the Copa Stories channel on YouTube. If you haven't seen any of the Derby Days episodes, essentially the thrust is that Ellie, as a presenter with a team of other people from Copa 90, including Martino, go and travel to various big game derbies all across the world. So some of the more recent ones, the most recent one was the Lombardia Derby. The one that's referenced in the episode quite a lot, because I watched it again just before we started recording, was the Berlin Derby, so between Union and Hertha. That episode is nearly an hour long or something, so I think the most recent series, they've been let off the leash a little bit in terms of the length of them and some of the other decision making. So they're really long, they're really in depth, they're really interesting. And as part of the episodes, the guys try to paint a picture of a city, explain why the derby is the way that it is, and talk about the history of the teams and the rivalry and the history of the city and the area as well. And they're really fascinating. So if you are listening to today's episode and you haven't seen any of the Derby Days videos, it may benefit your enjoyment of this episode to go and watch one or two before you listen. You don't need to, and it's explained what they are, and we talk a lot about the process behind making them, which I think would be similar to other sorts of filmmaking as well. So it's not a requirement. You don't need to have listened to, but they're fantastic. So if you haven't seen any anyway, I would encourage you to rectify that. And if you'd like to, then do so before you listen to today's episode. So it was great to see Ellie and Martino. It was great to talk to them and learn lots about the process and about themselves and their lives as well. So I hope you enjoy today's episode. This episode is supported by The Athletic, which is without doubt the best place to read about football online. You can go to theathletic.co.uk/Tifo, get a 7-day free trial and 50% off an annual subscription, which works out to be about £2.50 a month. It's so worth doing. There's a lot of fantastic stuff on there to fill your day with if you'd like to. I mean, you could spend your entire day reading stuff and not run out of things. So yeah, it's fantastic. Anyway, that's all. So without further ado, here is today's episode. Right.
We should do a podcast on this.
I got the guys from... Is it fair to call you the main two guys from Derby Days? What's it fair to call you? Just two guys from Derby Days.
Oh, no, from Copa 90. Wait,
yeah, but like...
Are we already going?
Yeah, we're going now, yeah.
Strong start, sorry.
All of that stuff is included still. Okay, we all know you're from Copa 90, but I want to talk about Derby Days today. Tell me how many people are in the team of the Derby Days team, because the films are really expensive, and it seems like they must take a hell of a lot of people to make them, particularly the more recent ones that are so much longer.
I'd say 4.
Is that all?
Max 5, yeah. If that, often it's 2. It's me and the cameraman at times.
It's a skeleton crew.
Yeah, it's when it can be, and when it depends on each derby, doesn't it? Argentina was up to 9 at one stage.
Right.
A lot of local fixers.
Yeah.
It's usually myself, 2 cameramen, and a producer plus a fixer, or the producer fixer roles combined.
Right. Okay.
Or I'm the producer fixer, and then we've got something else. It's usually 4's the go-to.
Yeah.
Say.
Are you involved in all the episodes, Martino?
Most of them, yeah.
What do you do?
Certainly since this kind of longer form approach to Derby Days, I've been more involved. I mean, I think you have to kind of look at... So my role in Derby Days is fixer. Right. Fixer and kind of organizer.
What do you mean when you say fixer?
So generally trying to find
everything.
Ellie the most interesting possible interviewees.
Right.
Helping him sort of develop the stories and plot lines that might be most interesting.
Yeah.
And kind of who might pair up well with that, right? Because most of that research will come from him.
Right.
And then it's kind of looking at locally on the ground where that works.
Mm.
And then a lot of practical stuff. So moving from location to location, how can we get all these separate monuments in the most efficient way in a day? And actually physically getting us in and around those situations.
Yeah.
And then a ton of translating, obviously, because of the languages.
I mean, I spent this afternoon watching the Berlin one, which is amazing, by the way. It's really, really good. And there's a great bit. Who does the editing? Is it the same person every time?
I edit.
You edit?
I edit along with another.
Right.
There's like 2 editors. There's a senior editor and myself. I'm like the secondary editor.
I love the editing. I love the pacing of it. I think it's great. I think like the attention to detail and the effort that you guys clearly go to make every bit better. You know, you watch a lot of documentaries or a lot of particularly YouTube videos, and it seems like the sort of lowest common denominator stuff, or, you know, the easiest way to get the point across. But there's a great moment in the Berlin episode, which is focused around Hertha and Union, where you talk about how one of your guests talks about how every train station looks different. And then there's like a 15-second cut where you have you've gone to, well, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 different train stations.
I had that already written before. I made Karim actually say that because no one had said it yet. But I had that. I mean, I've been to Berlin a few times. I already had that written in the script, that I have certain things in my head that I know I want to involve the city. Usually I've been to the city beforehand, or we go back again because I noticed something. For me, it's so important that every episode is different, and I just can't stand superlatives and cliches, and I don't want to hear this is the biggest city. I want you to literally get these little nuanced bits where you're like, oh, that city's like, that's what makes that city different. Yeah. I also think he undersold himself as well with what he does. I mean, there's a lot of work you don't see, from speaking with ultras, contacting ultras. I mean, there's a Berlin moment where we're filming where some Hertha ultras were kind of questioning what was going on. There's him who came over, explained it, and so there's that as well, which doesn't. This man's black book, and also just way of dealing with supporters. Because obviously, I think what I'm proudest of this is that we get to, if we don't contact or talk with supporters, then we're at least in their worlds to a way that no other camera crew can go. Yeah. That's because of the respect we kind of hold them in, and the way we treat them, and always make sure they're happy. Even the latest episode, Brescia, when you're watching Tobias's interview, 2 ultras came out of a kiosk to speak to us because they clocked it, and they would have been in trouble had we not had him to explain them before we knew it. We were drinking beers with them because they were like, oh, no, okay, you guys are like us. You totally get what we're doing. Right. So I think that's a massive thing that Martino does that possibly no one in the world can do, especially since he speaks 6 languages.
How did you do this at the beginning then? Because presumably by now, if you go to a city, the ultras have seen your videos, they know who you are, right? So there's more acceptance. How did you manage that at the beginning?
It was very different at the beginning. And if you watch the original series, it's a very different series. I wasn't in charge. We didn't have the fortune of having people know who we were, which got us into places. The one I always bring up is Bosnia. When we first went to Bosnia, for the most part, some ultras knew us, refused to talk, didn't want anything to do with us. A lot of ultras were suspicious, but then I went back for another derby. We took a YouTuber for a different show, and we couldn't bat people away because some people wanted to talk to us, and we're so appreciative that we came. So as each episode gets bigger and better, it's kind of a cool cycle, and people appreciate what we do and appreciate that we are on the side of the fans. We are only there to celebrate and document them and respect all boundaries. More let you into more circles, if that makes sense. Yeah. So when you get in a better circle, it means you get to make a better film. When you get to make a better film, it gets more viral, and each time it just goes on and on and on to the point where now, you know, there was a moment even in the Berlin episode, just as the Hertha fans, as I meant to say, come around the corner, one ultra came out of nowhere and stopped me, and I'm like, this is it. And he was like, respect. And I was like, cool. And he's like, don't film that. And we're like, deal. Or even one of the Hertha games we went to beforehand, those guys were looking at us and like giving up. You could just tell that we were not welcoming this. We were outside the stadium, but they just didn't like us. And Tino gave him a look. He gave him a look, like a nod, and then Tino went over. I don't know what happened, but the next thing I know, we had shared numbers, and
it all worked out. I mean, it's about so much football media is focused negatively on fans. The assumption always when you have a camera walking around these grounds and you're trying to address supporters' issues is that you're putting them in a bad light. Yeah. Right. So there's the really important kind of gradual process of people understanding that Derby Days is always done with that right intention, that right tradition. The most recent one we just did in Italy, you know, the whole episode kind of centered around the fact that in the end, the match wasn't attended by away fans, right? And the fact that we had developed a narrative with the supporters, helping them understand that, like, as much as this is a cultural show, looking at this, the fact that all of that sort of building of culture is being taken away in this very moment is something that suits your narrative as well as ours. Right? Yeah. And trying to find those moments when you can be in synthesis with the supporter group that you're studying in the end, it goes to serve two functions. It goes to educate people about this space or territory or whatever, but it also allows those supporters to kind of reaffirm their identity and their traditions and what they're about, which is important for fan groups, right? It's something that there's that constant passing on things to new generations, and what does that mean, right? And the role of people like Ellie and I of kind of going to these terraces and these environments is being able to kind of highlight where those traditions are and where they're succeeding, and what makes that then, what renders that then a club important, particularly now in a time where everyone plays FIFA with 6 different clubs and is forgetting about everyone else in the world.
So, despite you being in synthesis with them, and obviously many of those guys having seen and respecting Derby days and understanding what it is, are you ever scared when you're filming? Have you had moments where you've thought, actually, this isn't so cool?
I think I prefer the term aware.
Aware.
Until you realise you have to be scared. But
right.
I've told the stories enough times. There's been lots of moments where I've thought there's trouble here, but every time, through respect and communication, we've always been okay. And that every time, I've had people who it was very much more, particularly in Hamburg, where they wanted trouble, and I think it was just the almost unwavering respect I gave them. And my first response is, whenever anyone's has their reservations or even confrontational, is we're here, we're guests. We in no way are here to take advantage. What do you want from us? And often I'll be like, we don't want you here. Absolutely. I'm not even here to argue with you or try and that whole. I apologize, this is your space. We were here to make you guys look great. But if that's not what you want, we apologize and we'll leave now. By the way, we're here because we think you guys are fucking brilliant. You're amazing. We'll leave. And so that's always my go-to. It's never we're allowed to be here. It's like, no. We are always guests, and it's always a privilege to be in your space. These spaces have been made and cultivated over decades for your culture. It's not for us to be able to. We have no right to be there. That's my argument. I have no right to be anywhere near any active supporter scene, and I'm only there with their permission or whatever. So if they don't want us there, it's always absolutely what can we do to facilitate you and make sure there's no problems, because that's how I've always taken it. And I've worked with some people who haven't worked with us again, who have had different opinions and try and stick up, and obviously pride's a big thing, but for me it's really important that people, you always respect. Being
in somebody else's terrace in the middle of a match is no place to be proud.
Yeah,
right? It's like it's their space, and there's so few reference points for supporters groups to see media that talks about their space and the space that they're cultivating and respect it as their space. Most of the time, they are customers in this game that is football, right? The fact that the whole approach of Derby Days is this very deep cultural analysis of why they are the stakeholders of really what makes these club identities, these incredible things that then you're able to sell off and make brand pitches to Adidas and stuff.
This is the thing, presumably...
But it's that culture, it's that tangible, finite, irreplicable thing that the supporters groups and communities around them built. There's such little out there that's actually going out and celebrating that, not with some sort of maybe financial interest or branding interest, right? And the fact that we have the luxury with Derby Days at Copa 90 to be able to do that as a purely editorial function. It's important, but it also...
Do you mean because it doesn't need to make money?
It doesn't need to make money, and thus can be really about, what this often subversive group of supporters, or what this community, which can express subversive opinions, how that makes up, what the magic kind of pudding that makes that club special.
Presumably, some of the hostility is as a result of... the depiction of those people as customers as well, right? The way that football has changed over the last 20, 30 years, presumably the territorial side of it.
The depiction of criminal, or the depiction that somebody's there because they are trying to sell more shirts for some other brand and some other sponsor using the face and likeness of some person, because you ostensibly sign it all away when you go to a stadium. You can see how I've been here before to talk about why supporters are frustrated about that, right? And gone on my tangent, so we don't need to do it again. Hyperlink in the bottom. But, Derby Days is a really, really, really important tool for for establishing what that means and building that relationship between fans and media.
Yeah.
Right. There's that constant no phone, no media, don't bring that thing into the space. A big thing of Derby Days is kind of challenging that idea in a sense of, is there a right way to do this? Is there a way to document this subculture in a way that is more celebratory and not taking from them?
Yeah. And in a way that doesn't
giving something back to it. Like, is it constructive? Making a tifo is constructive. Gathering and marching to the stadium is constructive. What can you do that they're doing so much constructively to build the atmosphere and build the environment that is football? How can you continue to build on that rather than use that and sell it somewhere else or something?
Yeah. Well, in that case, let's if you don't mind, let's go back to the beginning. Even before Derby Days, I'd like to ask you guys both about how you got started, a little bit about your lives as well. Can I start with you, Martino? Where do you make birth? I don't understand.
I was born in Los Angeles.
Right.
My mother's from Milan, and I was raised quite a few years of my life in Italy, as well as the US. Studied sports sociology in university. Then worked with refugees and football programs in Italy for a while until starting a magazine in Montreal, Canada.
Was that the Tifo magazine?
Tifo magazine. And while launching that magazine, my friend who was making it with me ran into Ellie at an ice cream shop.
Right.
And the rest is history.
You'll never meet me if you ever know what city I'm in. If you go to the local ice cream shop in that city, I'll turn up.
I like it. And so you met Ellie before. Were you already working for Copa 90 at the time?
I was on a Copa 90 job, but we were halfway around the world. We were doing a show called Ellie for Brazil, where I was trying to get to Brazil for the price of a plane ticket from London to Rio, essentially. And so I was going around the world through Europe, got a cheap flight from Oslo through to America, and was driving through America, Central America. Pardon me. And so, and then we were in New York. It's a great story, basically. My first time in New York in the end of May. It was really hot, a week or two to go to the World Cup. And then I wanted to go see Chinatown Soccer Club play Gastown. It was in some big event in Gastown I was obsessed with before I had my job at Copa 90, because Gastown was like this first kind of cultural blog about football that wasn't really about football. I missed it. I went to the local ice cream store with a friend to mourn, and then to get Wi-Fi, there's an old English pub across the road I tried to log on to, and then a guy had a Gastown hat. I was like, shit, are you Gastown? He's like, come drink with us. And then that was his magazine partner.
Right.
And he's like, man, you need to meet this guy. He's just like you. And then that was that night. And then we went and interviewed him for the show that was going around all the world. And then it was like, we need to link up again. And took a while, took a few months.
Yeah.
Post-World Cup, but eventually got him on one about...
In Seattle?
Yes. You did Torino first, or was Seattle first?
Seattle first.
Seattle first. I remember first. Seattle first, and then Seattle. Yeah, was it Derby Days? Seattle? No, it was just general like, Seattle doc. God, Halloween time. Yeah.
Can I get you to come a little bit closer?
Yes. Sorry.
No worries. You can shift the table this way if you want. If you need a bit more space.
No, it's cool.
That's cool.
And then that was. So
was it love at first sight?
Yeah, I think it was love at first sight, and then it was hate at second, love at third, and then just fucking retribution. It was just, it's a love-hate relationship.
Right.
It happens when you work in football.
And we're both this passionate about something, right?
Sure.
It's like...
My first fight in Seattle on that highway. We'd known each other 2 days. It's like, yeah.
What did you fight about? What do you fight about?
We fight about everything.
Everything?
Everything.
Well, like football stuff or just everything?
Everything.
Everything.
What was your last fight?
What was the last fight?
He's having one right now? What
was the last fight? We sit next to each other as well. Often it's about his fucking rubbish. He left his rubbish on my desk to take. But then actually, to be fair, it was actually on his part of the desk. But still, it stunk.
It's
This is why Alex doesn't come into the office very often. It's
everything. But just, when you're in a tight space and you're very passionate about the subject, there's a mutual respect between the two that I've probably shed more beds with this guy or plane rides or dinner dates than anyone else I know. So anyone else, but now it's been 5 years. So.
Right.
5 years and like 60 countries later.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Hey, so let's go back to the beginning with you. From Australia?
From Melbourne, Australia.
How did you end up here?
I got into football thanks to the 2002 World Cup. I used to hate it. And then 2002 World Cup came by, which meant Australia got proper football at a proper time, 4 p.m. after school.
Right.
For that, you have to watch all international football and European football 3 a.m.
Is that why you hated it?
No. I hated it because I was my brain had been contaminated with the same crap every other Australian gets, where you're told Australia used to, and it's changed a lot since.
Right.
Had a very racist, misogynistic, homophobic view on football. It's well documented. I've done a documentary about it.
Right. What do you mean that the view was those things, or the view of football was that they were?
I always bring it up. If you want to know about Australian football, our best-selling book by our kind of hero is a guy called Johnny Warren. He was our captain in 1974 World Cup. Mm-hmm. He fought for football in Australia. He called his book Sheila's, Wogs and Poofters, because that's what the sport was considered. That's who it was for. So Sheila's, Wogs, Poofters. If you can look them up if you want to know the meaning of those words. That's essentially what it was. But he took great pride in the fact that the sport was for those people. His kind of counter argument was, it is for them, those people, and it's for everyone else in between. That's what makes this sport so special. Sport in Australia is very divided by class, it's divided by state. There's little sports that are named after this. AFL, many people may have heard of, started in the state of Victoria. Used to be called Victorian football.
Right.
Cricket is for kind of everyone. Rugby unions for the posh people. Rugby leagues for the working class of the east and northeast. No one even knows the rules anywhere else in the country. It's fascinating in Australia as a
Did Australia inherit that from Britain? Because some of those things sound similar.
Weird. We did, but then again, it's fascinating. It's like a lot of countries. It's like, how did a sport that's created by England, loved and adored by England like no other sport. Australia is basically made up of, obviously, respect our indigenous people, and it's their land, but since the English came, it's been made up primarily of Southeast Asian communities who are obsessed with football, primarily Vietnamese, and communities from post-war Europe, Italy, Greece. Melbourne's got the biggest Greek community outside of Greece, huge Italian community, huge Balkan community, huge Lebanese community, all communities that are obsessed with football back in their motherlands. And for some reason, I think it's due to the nature and the patronizing, misogynistic, again, toxic, masculine ideals of sport in Australia that football is a game for shillers, wogs and poofters, and a lot of people.
What's the game for men as they would see it then? What, rugby or
Aussie rules, or Aussie rules, rugby, or the most ironic one is cricket. Right. Again, I actually don't mind cricket, but every argument used against football can be used against cricket. But for some reason, cricket's just seen as kind of the quintessential Australian pastime when it should be football, and it's slowly changing. It really is. But anyway, going back to it, so I grew up on AFL. I come from a very AFL strong background, but I was always obsessed with the world and the globe and traveling the world. And it wasn't until that World Cup and the kids I kind of saw as cool, because one was Greek and one was Ukrainian, running home to watch games. I was like, you guys are cool. Why would you watch that sport, Right. That's mad. And then I watched one game. Is that my phone or your phone? It's freaking me out. Sorry. I was saying, I always go back to I remember just the Uruguay, Denmark, Senegal, Sweden, all these countries I'd never heard of, literally didn't even know existed. And they're being played in sold-out stadiums in Korea. Just a slow obsession. And there was the Ronaldinho goal against England in Korea. And I always say it's a Brazilian playing for a team in France against a bunch of English in a sold-out stadium in Korea, and I'm watching it with my Greek friend, and it was like the whole world in this one little this moment. And then from that day, that was it. And I was like, this is the answer to.
I think that's something Ellie and I always think about though, which is that in the office of Copa 90, we're probably two of the only people who don't come from England. Certainly the only two people who come from non-football priority nations. Right?
Yeah.
I grew up largely in Los Angeles as a kid. Most of my schooling in Los Angeles. Mostly in Australia, right? This battle of proving your interest in football and kind of what that means within that community, right? And that forcing and forging your way into understanding football cultures and communities in that different way, because you're always removed from them, but you're always kind of part of them, because everyone is in this kind of multicultural space of these international cities trying to experience football, not having a real genuine thing to go after, right? I went to the first Galaxy game. Thankfully, I had AC Milan and this genuine connection. My cousins and my family, I could go visit and I could go to games. And so that sort of cultivated a genuine relationship with the sport, or sort of a more organic relationship with the sport. But that's, I think, in a big way that comes to explain why we're kind of so obsessed with telling football as these very cultural things.
Because you sort of come from the outside.
There's an outsider's perspective to it that we share.
Not that there's really an outside of football, I guess, but in terms of,
Well, I always love it
as alien as you can be to it.
Right.
People always ask me, "What's your club?" Often new people at the office, and I go, "Don't really have a club." And they're like, "What? How can you be a football fan and not have a club?" I'm like, if anything, that makes you more of a football fan because you're kind of not. You're not kind of enclosed by this space of like, I support Chelsea, so my whole prism of football comes through Chelsea. And then that's interesting as well. You often find it with Arsenal fans, like their whole world. I remember watching World Cup final with them, they were talking about who could come play for Arsenal. I'm like, this is the World Cup final, why does it have to be about Arsenal in this moment? So many people watch through a prism where I came in as like, I don't have a club. I'm fascinated by how fascinated other people are with their clubs. And Tino, whilst he's an AC Milan fan, I can guarantee you he's really just a fan of the game in general. And I don't mean the sport, I mean the culture. And we're both kind of, I feel, coming in obsessed with the culture. I mean...
We're shit at football.
I mean, I'm not even talking about playing. Yes, I am. But that's not the point anyway. Like, I know plenty of people who are good at football, but they still don't love football for the reasons we do. It's because of their club. A lot of people love a club or a league or a division, and that's just not what I'm into. I've just never been. And I think that's because I feel so strongly about the game as a whole, as opposed to a club. Like I said, if most people who are watching this right now think about their first memories, probably their dad or their mum or their cousin or their uncle or their auntie have taken to a game, and then that game and that club and those colours in that stadium have become the nostalgia of their childhood and their teenage years, and that cup run or that promotion or relegation or title win. And then that's really manifested the love of the game, and they've learned to love other stuff, and they appreciate also another classic player that may not have played for that club. Whereas I'm just like, and I think Tino for the most part as well, is just like love all of it, and none of it's really for me. I just enjoy celebrating enjoy basking in the way it makes other people, basking in it, critiquing it, celebrating it. There's a whole bunch. Like I often think it's absolutely ridiculous what football does to people, and also how much it distracts us from what we should really be focusing on in the world right now. And also, I'm getting older as well. I'm not realising it's actually fucking depressing how much it distracts people from what they should really be worried about, and how seriously they take transfer windows and transfer. I don't know what else. Transfer players, titles, promotion, relegations, board members attacking board members out. What is it?
Ed Woodward, right?
Oh, it's just embarrassing. Like, that guy's a dickhead, but like, what are you doing, man? Like, Manchester's got a massive problem with homelessness right now, and Spice, and you're out there throwing flares at...
Little on the fact that you funded a club called FC United of Manchester 10 years ago. So if
you're
really that upset,
that.
just walk down the street, mate. There's a really lovely football experience waiting for you for almost no money.
Or go help the homeless. Like, Manchester needs all the kind of help it can get right now, and that's what you should be doing, not... But again, at the same time, I'm also fascinated by people feel that strongly, or that they're brainwashed that much by the media.
About Manchester and like Manchester's desire to always be like the best and the most rugged, and the idea of slipping down to FC United of Manchester versus like this great pride that the city has for like their establishing of the Industrial Revolution. Like just the idea of why you might switch or what that is. It's fascinating, but also weird.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's interesting also what you're saying about clubs. I don't really have a club either. I flip between a few different ones depending. I mean, my family has a couple of different clubs in it, but people ask me on Twitter all the time who I support, and when I say I don't really have a team, I get a very strange reaction. I also feel like it's a way of people trying to, maybe not, if it might be cynical to say trying to pigeonhole you, but trying to understand you. So these questions like who do you support tend to come after you've said something, and then as long as you make a statement about football and they say, well, who do you support? You say, well, I support this team. They go, fine, now I understand what you're saying. This is why you think this. This says everything about you. It's a way
that can be the case. There is a type of but then that works a lot, but then often it doesn't work. You know, certain people in the office, I'm like, oh, really, you go for them, and they're nothing like that. The fan base that you kind of attach to, to them, but then you kind of go, oh, okay, there's exceptions to rules, I guess. But then there's often people who say, I'm from here, but I go for this person. And you're like, I know the type.
It's a lens through which people, understand the world. It's a strange thing. Just a quick break in today's episode for me to tell you about a few new podcasts that are being released by The Athletic, or have been released by The Athletic, I should say. The first is 5,000 to 1. But Leicester City, the Athletic's Rob Tanner is joined by club legend Matt Elliott to bring you a weekly podcast dedicated to Leicester City Football Club. Subscribe for expert insight, breaking news, and big name guests. Another new episode, or another new series, is Why Always Us? The Athletic's Sam Lee joins David Mooney to bring you expert insight into the goings-on in the blue half of Manchester every single week. It was very exciting. I mean, there's a bunch here. There's Talk of the Devils, which is United, Pod on the Tyne, Newcastle, On the Ball, Norwich City, View from the Lane, Tottenham. Another new one is From the Rookery End, which is a Watford FC podcast hosted by John, Jason and Mike, lifelong Watford fans, season ticket holders in the Rookery End, and since 2010, these podcasts are their take on life as a Watford fan. So that is newly released from The Athletic. The Molyneux View as well is about Wolves, and You Irons about West Ham. The good news is that all of these podcasts are free to subscribe to. You do not need to be a subscriber of The Athletic to listen to the podcasts. So I would encourage you, whatever you do after today's little read, to go and do that for your club of choice. But I would also encourage you to become a subscriber. It's very affordable. It's about £2.50 per month. There is an insane amount of excellent, high-quality, ad-free, football-based editorial to read. And the app is really accessible and really, it's really fantastic. So it's well worth doing. If you would like to do that with our link today, you can get a 7-day free trial to see if you like it, which I would highly encourage. And also you get 50% off an annual subscription if you choose to sign up, which works out to be about £2.50 a month or 8p a day. So please do go check it out. That is theathletic.co.uk/Tifo. theathletic.co.uk/Tifo for a 7-day free trial and 50% off your annual subscription. It's really worthwhile. Anyway, thanks for listening, and back to today's episode.
So how did you get started with Copa 90?
So I entered a competition for the 2013 Confederations Cup. They were looking for a new presenter, and I'd been in a similar competition for the 2010 South Africa World Cup, in which I'd come second, and I vowed I would not come second again. So I basically spent a shitload. Can I swear?
Yeah.
Spent a shitload on this video. I quit my job. I dropped uni, made this video. I won the video. Got to go to Brazil.
Right. It's a good job you won. Eh? That could have been a very different life.
But I kind of just knew. Like, it turns out that I'd been hinting the whole time. Like, I just knew I was gonna. I knew I was gonna. Sometimes you just know you're meant to do certain things. I was like, there's no way they're taking this off of me.
Sure.
Like, I was very strategic. I only dropped the video on the last hour of the last day, so people would be making these videos, and then I just went out and spent about $4,000 and like just went all out. And I was like, I'm not gonna lose. And then I realized that I was like I thought I'd just win, and then I went into a final 3, and whoever got the most views. But the day, you had a week to get the most views, but that day I was flying out to Tokyo to support Australia in the World Cup qualifiers. And I had a Skype with the guys at Copa 90 and said, listen, I'm not going to be able to promote my video. I'm going to be in Japan for the first time ever with my mates on a holiday. We've been talking about for 6 months. Turns out the second I'd already said that, they were like, this guy's won it. Like, turns out I was going to win no matter what, because they were going to let me go even if I didn't win with the other person. But I won, went to Brazil for 5 weeks, hosted a show, and then the audience were like, yeah, get this guy in. I just knew, because like I said, my whole angle in the video is like, do you see players on my wall? No, there's fans, and everyone, I'd take the piss out of it as well. But the point is, like, I just didn't know anyone like me who was just like, didn't really care about a team or players, or didn't really watch the sport, but just wanted to use the sport as an avenue to learn about other cultures and how the rest of the world is. Yeah. So therefore, that was my whole kind of angle, and it won me that job in Confederations Cup. That was a one-off. And then Copa said, do you want to come and... It's funny, so you talk about Derby Days. Derby Days was lined up for another presenter who's doing another show on Copa 90. And I was like arguing, no, that show, I have to do that show. And they're like, oh, well, it's already been given to someone else. So, and I was like, I kind of just was smart about it. I just kept bringing up, well, if you go, you should go do Park, Thessaloniki, and you should make sure you go do, Exeter versus Plymouth. And they were just like,
you slid in very slowly.
I was just like saying these ones that they had all the cliched ones, and I was like, make sure you do this. And it didn't take me long to realize, even in the office, I knew more than most people about football culture.
Right. How did the other presenter feel?
You know what? Maybe he didn't like it, but I think 5 years later, I mean, like how hard I've worked on it. And a lot of people were upset because he was quite popular on the channel, but it is what it is. Like, again, after half a decade with it, you just have to like get comfortable that, you know, you put in the work and effort to justify it. It's always nice to see a couple comments like, I didn't vote for Ellie during that competition, but I get why he won. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not very good at much. So the one thing I'm good at is making football films. So I'm kind of like proud of it now, and I'm just like, own it. So
whose idea was Derby Days then? I mean, it has a long time
someone in
ago.
the office. I think it was my creative director. But again, I mean, Derby shows have been done since the beginning of time.
I mean,
so
the classic whenever we go anywhere, right, is Danny Dyer. Mm-hmm. And it's how does that sort of compare? That was the standard. And someone needed to do an updated version. I mean, Danny Dyer...
No, it's very different.
In the years since working with these different supporters groups, I have found out very funny things about Danny Dyer's show. Like Galatasaray supporters have told me that they were paid to bring kebab knives.
Oh, wow.
Or Red Star Belgrade supporters told me that they basically sent like the 5 mates who have like mental or like kind of mentally challenged. Like,
sure.
Then like mental issues, they basically sent the craziest 5 mates as a joke to hang out with Danny Dyer. Right. And they still see the episode as like a running joke. These are things.
I'm detaching myself from
these
these
are
comments.
things you hear while trying to organize things for else. I mean,
these are rumors.
How much is it people saving face
sure.
in post? How much is it?
None of these are substantial.
The reality.
And I would never want to question.
He's a very talented man.
I would not want to question any Serbian ultras or what they did. Let's be smart about this.
It's certainly left a rippling impact on our ability to do things like Derby Days.
Yeah.
And like a skepticism.
Right. Because people are skeptical because of how it's been done before.
How much of a caricature.
Yeah,
but people also love him. Like, people always bring it up to me as well. And many trips, people will be like, Danny Dyer, and I'm like, no. But I love that show as well. Like, you'll love for what it is, man. I still
He's
think
your
it's
trailblazer, basically, Danny Dyer. You're kind of following in Danny Dyer's footsteps a little bit.
But there's been people before that. BBC have done an amazing series on it back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
Vice have done some decent episodes. On rivalries in general.
Great. The Algeria one's awesome.
Algeria one was cool. Before I did Boca River, Vice set the standard for the Boca River one. They were there for the best.
The pepper spray.
Yeah, like I could be in that garage with I can never pronounce his name, Rafa Dizeo. So like, it's just like there's been other great ones, but we're not the only ones, and it's not a unique idea.
No, sure.
I just think
it's grown into something.
It's grown into like, I took over it in 2015, starting with Madrid, and it decided when I take over, I don't want it really to be about even the rivalries of the clubs, but about the places we're going to, and just trying to understand that. And I think that's what makes me proud. Is every time you watch it, you'd be like, oh, wait, they're like that? They're like,
yeah.
You know, best example is Brescia, Bergamo. We were actually meant to do Malaysia, Indonesia, but because of time, and we just couldn't make it down there. And I was like, we'd done 2 great ones. We needed a 3rd great one. It was Atalanta, Brescia. And it was like, the rivalry is good, but what makes these plates unique? And when you talk about our arguments, we had a 2-week argument about like, but how do I describe this place to people? I don't want to just be like, here's 2 towns. Like, what is this? And then we worked, and I just was over like a coffee and a cigarette, and he was like, basically they built Milan. Like that's what they're famous for. They build in Milan. If you go to Milan, so much. I'm like, wait, what's that? How? And it's like, oh, well, they're known for being construction workers. It's part of their culture, hardworking. And I'm like, oh, this works. Okay, well, both provinces. I spoke to a friend of mine. She's from the area. She confirmed that. And then I was like, okay, we've got a narrative here. Because every episode is kind of like, here's what you think about a place. Mm-hmm. Actually, it's like this. And nothing's an exclusive truth. Even what we're saying, there's parts of generalizations. And I hope people always take it with a grain of salt. But it's like, it's what it's known for. And it's hopefully when you meet someone from Bergamo or Brescia, you'll be able to say, hey, Muratore, or hey, you guys have got custom. That's what I want. I want people to just be like, and I want people from smaller clubs to feel like the rest of the world cares about them and that their story is important. Like my favorite bit of Atalanta Bergamo, there's a lot, is like we were trying to find what is Brescia, how do we make Brescia, because Atalanta's like, it's one of the only clubs named after a Greek god, let alone Italian clubs. And it's like so unique, their atmosphere, and that's saying we don't go to the stadium, we go to Atalanta. And we're struggling with Brescia because it is a great club, it's a beautiful club and the fans are great, but we're like, I'd read the script 3 times, and it wasn't until we got there and everyone kept talking about La V and the V, and you looked in the stadium and the V was everywhere, and I was like, that's what means a lot to them, the V, like it means a lot, the V. and it's like, it might not be a trophy, it might not be a world-class player, they've had them as well, but that's what, when you go to Brescia, it's about the V.
Yeah.
When you go to Atalanta, it's about La Dea. When you go to Union, it's about the fact that we built the stadium and we're not trying to be the best. When you go to Hertha, it's even that chant, ha ho hey, Hertha BSC. That means a lot to them that you know that chant, or that they're the old lady, because of the name Hertha is an old traditional name. Just little things like that where it's like, that's what makes you special. I'm a big believer. I do not believe winning or trophies really mean anything. I think its identity's about so much more than that. And
that's what makes the video so interesting, man. I mean, I love the fact that the first 15, 20 minutes of the Berlin video is just about the history of Berlin.
Yeah,
I barely mention football, and it's like, that's amazing to me. I think that's great.
You talked about it earlier and like, this is where like I have to give Ellie huge credit. Like, you talked about it earlier with taking a group of people into these ultras environments. Oftentimes, I am the phone call that they have back to. So you have to really trust that somebody is more meticulous and more obsessed with perfection and more caring about the story than even I am, with my like potential safety on the line in being in contact with these people. And like you mentioned earlier, the thing of the stations, but like, whether it's the thing of the stations, whether it's finding 12 different clubs across Berlin, whether it's profiling every freak you can find on the street, and that means like 120 different weird looking people in Berlin that Ellie's making me chase after down a block, whether that's like going to find 15 different iterations of the Casoncello, stopping every man, woman, and child in Brescia who has some semblance of a V on them, right? Like, that hyper intense attention to detail that he's doing everything with, and like really wanting to uncover, and like the source of so many of our arguments, right, is, Martino, is this really true? How true is this? How much are you over embellishing this thing because it's like a nice flowery narrative?
Sure.
Right. And that's really what makes it work, right? For so much of it is kind of this like romance and fantasy about football intertwined with someone as meticulous and Ellie, and was like intense about really getting it right.
It's about
and the fact that we go through the effort for it. You know, we were in Brescia and Bergamo. It was not easy to drive from Brescia to Como to Monza to Milan, and that's a day and a half of your shooting, right? And
how long were you there?
How much did we mention Monza Como Lecco? Watch the film. Like, we stopped using shots about it after 45 seconds.
And
we lost a tenth of our time working on it.
So we spent a day and a half in Monza and Como because they're two provinces. They're two provinces within the region that we're using to describe how it's glamorous. So what I'm really proud of is, I don't think people even recognize stuff like that. Like, we went to Como and we went to Monza to talk about the fancy lake and the fancy F1 circuit.
Yeah.
And that's just to give context. Now, most people just say it and then you cut it. It's like, no, we have to go.
Yeah.
And we went in a Fiat
Panda.
5 of us plus crew plus driver squished in. Honestly, when we got out at Como, and what we had to be there at, we left, it was dark when we left, 5 a.m, 5:30 to get to Como, then to Monza, and then to Milan, and get those 3 places. Hampshire episode, the first Hampshire episode, we went to Winchester twice just to make sure we could get as much of Winchester, not just talk about why it's considered posh, but show. And then obviously Berlin, Jesus Christ. After the game, we were out, our cameraman, Josh, to tell you, he got basically beat up outside a nightclub. We survived the ultras because I wanted to film the nightclubs and make sure that we cover like the nightclub scene. And I mean, you don't even see one of the strange guys who, when we say Berlin's full of all different types of people, you know, one guy was like, no, you can't film me. And I was like, I'll give you 10 euros. No, 5 euros, no, 10 euros, no, 20 euros. Like, you give me 20 euros just to get a shot of me. I'm like, I'll give you 20 euros.
Which guy? I hope he made the final cut.
Yeah, of course he did. He's great. What's his, how do you describe him? He's wearing a sheriff's suit with a red tie. He's like Turkish with a thing. And he just goes, oh, hold my fucking, hit a blunt. Hold this. Get the shot. And he just walk up with the camera like this.
Yeah,
and he couldn't believe when I gave him the 20 euros. I'm like, that's worth 20 euros for me. Like,
there was the other Turkish man you bought his lunch. Did he make the edit?
Which one was that?
On the very last day, we were like leaving for the airport, and you like ran back, and you're like, "No, I need to buy this man's lunch so he can get a portrait of him."
He was Syrian. But like for me, that's really important that like you get what you're talking about as well. You need a visual representation, and like I don't care about how much it costs. I don't care about whatever it is, like how long it takes the detour. If it's important to the story, because it's so easy to say things. I want there to be proof of it. I want you to see what Como looks like. I want you to see that we've gone to these F1 tracks and we've gone to find out just, I really want, because it's a privilege what we do. It's a fucking privilege. It's ridiculous.
We have the best jobs ever.
Yes,
right?
but
like,
it's also like a responsibility to be like, okay, if I always think like if I was watching this show, I want to see that you really went to the effort to. So when I watch a thing about Bergamo and Brescia and the first 10 minutes are in Como Monza in Milan, I'm like, wait, hold on, is this about Bergamo? Oh, that's like, wow, they had to have gone there. That's them in front of the signs. I think that's what I'm proud of. Sort of. It's like you see that we really went to the effort to find out about information and actually go there and find out, not just tell you, I read about this on Wikipedia.
That's great, man. The thing is, like, that comes across in the videos really well. As I said, I mentioned at the beginning about the signs thing. To me, and I don't have a lot of filmmaking experience, but watching that, it's quite clear that you can see these guys literally went to this number of train stations. You don't need, they didn't need to do that. And it's made the film, for me, like 100% better, but probably for most viewers, it's made it like 1% better, maybe.
Yeah,
but if you have that 100 times over in the film.
Like we went back to Berlin, like a little bit, like we went back, I blew the budget, so we had to go back on my own money, but I was like, I had to get a shot of the what was it? The meatball, the bruschetta. I had to get, because often during the edit, because I do the edit, you do so many interviews, you get so much information thrown at you that you don't remember everything, and it's only during the edit you're like, oh, what? Like, techno started because of the squats, and they brought those guys in from Detroit at Hardback's Records, and I was like, why didn't we go to Hardback? Why did I think of that? And it's like, there's so much going on, so we went back. I had a list of things we have to get of what they're talking about, because I don't want to just tell you what I want to show you. I want every time you're like, whoa, where am I going? Yeah. I know it's a lot to the eye, but like,
it gives it scale though, and it makes it feel cared for and considered, and I think it's really important.
And the other thing is, like, when you're trying to promote this message of like, go out, experience football, be in the active supporter scene, go out to the games, like be an active fan and enjoy that experience. Like, you need to kind of express that in the way you're kind of living it and producing it, which means like actually going to every bit and every corner of it. Right?
And at the end of the day, it's again, like, go back to that privilege. It's not, very few of us can afford to go out to these places and see these things. So for me, it's almost an obligation to show you this food, and if you get to see it with a nice camera angle and a nice shot. So like seeing what a bullet actually is, and seeing casoncelli on a plate, and seeing medieval stuff. It's just like, I don't, most of us can't afford to go and do that. So it's like, if this show can take me to these places, then it's a really cool thing.
Is he normally the same camera guy you have?
Switches between a couple.
Who are
this
they?
Series, they're often freelance, because not many people at the office will work with me anymore. Okay. But
hey, they're great. Who are they? They're great.
The audience benefits. So, no, because it's such random times. Often it's a call, hey, can you come to Italy for 10 days? It'll probably be dangerous, and it'll be sunrise to past sunset.
A lot of time in a Fiat Panda.
I mean, it's a lot of time in a crunch car, and it's always over 15 hours of a day.
So you want small guys who don't sleep very much, and
with us, no, but
do what they're told.
So Tom Price was our main cameraman. He used to work Copa even before us,
right?
And he went out and did his own thing, and we love him. We work really well together. Not many people, like I said, work with me, so he puts up with my shit, but he also gets.
Why don't people work with you?
Because again, like,
are you a secret asshole?
I'm happy to say I'm an asshole. I'm not like out here doing this. The one thing I learned in the media game is like being a nice guy. Like, you can be a nice guy and make okay stuff, or you can. It's an asshole with context. Like, I'm an asshole in like the on match day, like don't fuck around. We're here to get shots. Right. It's a privilege for us to be here.
So it's in aid of the creative endeavor that you're an asshole.
Yeah, but it's like no, I'm not. I don't think it's that I'm an asshole.
Sorry, we were calling you.
I don't care. Like, no, that's. I've learned, like, I've kind of just come to accept it. Like, there's been times I'm like, oh, I could be a nice guy, but then I look at what nice guys make, and I'm like, I'm not up for that. Like, the second the thing goes down, like, it's like, drink, do whatever you want, and he can vouch for that. The last trip, it's like, I don't give a shit. Go do your thing. Just like when we work, we have to work, and a lot of nice people I find are like, oh yeah, if we get the shot, I'm happy with that. A lot of people won't fly back to Berlin on their own money, pay a cameraman freelance themselves, and pay for everything to get the shot for the audience. I'm doing it. I'm an asshole for the audience, and it's like,
I think that's good.
And I think it's like this whole thing of like, everyone's gone on about being nice and stuff. It's like,
you're an Ed Norton kind of asshole, all for the art, right?
All for the art. And again, it's not like calling people names and stuff. Like people will
Sure.
be like, he's an asshole because he's asked me to get the shot again. He's
You're
an asshole
intense.
because intense.
You're intense.
Okay,
You're
intense. We've been saying arsehole for 5 minutes. We mean intense.
I mean, it can come off as abrasive. It's shit.
But I could-
you know
I
what
could-
I mean?
I-
He can be a
I
little
mean-
fucker sometimes.
But that's the thing, I'm
But it's
transparent.
worth it. Again, like the meticulousness of all this is worth it.
Yeah.
Like caring about how these people will react and how these communities will see it, like it's completely justified. The best anecdote I can give you, okay, about how impressively intense Ellie can be on these shoots is we were staying in a hotel in Berlin after 10 days of the shoot. In the hotel in Berlin, which every morning Ellie's like got us down. We're running through scripts. Have you loaded the footage? Tino, what are the numbers we have to call today? Bop, bop. Like he's really taken on a little piece of German organization. You know what I mean? Taking one from the local population. And the hotel manager at the end of our trip wrote Ellie a personal note being like, Eliov, I'm a big fan of Derby Days. I never understood and realized all the work you put in behind this. Like, congratulations. It's amazing.
That's cool.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's if you spend 10 days kind of watching it, it's a really heavy, intense process. But like to the point where hotel concierges notice it.
Right, yeah. It's their job to notice things, but yeah.
I mean,
yeah, no, I agree. Can I ask you about the process then? Because as we have discussed, obviously, clearly loads goes into it. When you were talking at the beginning, you mentioned that you have ideas before. Obviously, there's planning involved, but I didn't expect you to say that the stadium, the train station thing had been considered before that your guest said it on camera. So what is the process like from the beginning? The first day you decide where you're going. What do you do? What are the things happening?
First, it's trying. Well, I think we have to go back. Because it changes, right? So, like, first to contextualize, like, Copa 90, to try and break it down.
Sure.
Derby Days has been somewhat seasonal.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like the first 2 seasons, which consist of 15 episodes, I guess.
Right. What season are you on now?
I'd say the last thing was season 5.
Season 5, okay.
I think if you to talk about the first 2 seasons, people will notice it. People say it like because the people say you need to go back and do them again, like you do them now. Season 1 was great, and there's great episodes in there. We wouldn't have the budgets, we didn't have the time, we didn't have
the realization
that you could like that, and I wasn't.
Right?
I didn't work as hard either. I didn't put in the effort. I didn't know I could. They didn't know I could, and it was just like it was run by different. When me and Martino started like really running them was from Madrid, which I always say is like the start of season 3, which is like the Spanish series, and then that was like the first one that went over 12 minutes. That went to 19 minutes. And then the next one, the Spanish ones, I pushed when people weren't looking. I pushed them to 22.
They benefit from it, though, right?
They do.
The longer ones,
they do, but
so much better.
But
but common sense doesn't always apply.
The process is pulling teeth.
Just trust me. Let's not go there. The point is now it's been trusted. It's been trusted too, and we're given a lot of trust, and it's really appreciative. And we don't always do.
Have you got a cap? You're not allowed to go for an hour.
No, but I wouldn't want to. No. I wouldn't want to. I even don't think they always need to go 57. I don't think Italy had to the last one, but because of what had happened with the ultras, it was that extra 10 minutes. I don't want to go long for long's sake, but I don't want to go short for short's sake either. Like I think people now know, especially after Italy, because I didn't think Italy would do as well as it has. You know, again, 100K in 48 hours. It's insane for an hour-long video on YouTube. For a video that small clubs. Small clubs in context. But
so the length is dictated by the content, right?
I don't even know anymore, man.
Right.
To be honest,
they're getting longer. One thing that's not been nice is that since we do it on YouTube, there is no requirement. Yeah. There's not you cutting 3 minutes off so you can make space for commercials or something like that, right?
There's a lot of negotiating with creative director, and that's good because often I get quite greedy with.
But going back to like the process, so we had Spain.
Oh yeah, so going back to Spain. Well, Spain's an exception. It was the first, but like going after that, it's often like. I've got this magazine archive I call where basically I've got every single magazine from 2009 and I've electronically logged every subject matter every month from World Soccer to Mundial to 442 to Rabona. And so I'll type in those letters and pull out everything there and learn as much as I can. Usually it's me for the first week or two doing all the research about the stories, whereas Martino will be contacting ultras and clubs and speaking to people he knows. And then from there, it's like a slow process. Often it'll involve finding the right fixer. And that fixer will be going out. We've got a guy in Spain. So we've done 6 in Spain together. So like that guy is often... Diego Crespo. Shout out. Does he have a show?
Crespación
and Real Oviedo
Culture Fans.
So like he's like you talk about people who aren't seen behind the camera. That guy, especially for Spain, they aren't what they are without him. I mean, he came on to help us in Madrid last minute because we were out of our depth because it was the first time me and him were in charge, and it took 2 days to realize we are fucked here.
Yeah.
And he comes in, and within 48 hours, I'm on his shoulders in a riot on his just filming. Like the guy did it for free that episode, I think, as well. And then from there, like he became a thing. So it's about finding the people. That's the most important thing, actually. I'd say, because you can have them. I can know everything, but if people are boring or people don't pop or they don't show those emotions, that it's just pointless.
Who's the guy, the Berlin football history expert?
Jacob Sweetman.
So he the guy who stood in front of the fountain or whatever? Yeah. That guy was amazing.
He's amazing.
So I never heard of that guy before, but I mean, I wanted to watch an hour of him telling me what. Do you know what I mean?
The full interview is 2.5 hours long. In case you throw it up on the pod.
Oh yeah,
that guy was amazing.
If you watch The Sun, because we filmed at 11 high, The Sun, we had to take a stop because the sun was, when I went in the middle, it went right down on him, and then we had to wait for it to come down again. So that was a whole day, because I was in the middle of winter, so we only had 5 hours sunlight a day.
Right. We'd gotten to Berlin when the time changed, so we lost an hour of runway.
Oh, that's right. No, basically though, like Jacob was found by Tino 3 weeks before.
Right.
And then Jacob...
What does he do?
I met Jacob this is through following like weird super niche football culture. He started a magazine called No Dice, which was an English speaking magazine about football culture in Berlin exclusively, which was like amazing, and it's 3-year run, but interesting for me and you and maybe 3% of the Tifo football audience.
Sure.
And then I met him. I don't know. I've been reading his blogs. He's written a bunch of really interesting articles, featured on When Saturday Comes, I think, at some point.
Yeah, he was great. He was great, man. I thought he was super intense.
Yeah, he's great. But like again, that only comes because Tino knew him through going to lower league football back in 5 years ago and things like that. And having his trust, having seen stuff earlier. Tobias should have seen. Have you seen the Italian episode of Derby Days?
The most recent one?
Yeah.
I watched the first 10 minutes of it.
Yeah,
and then
so
you
the
guys
guy in the
arrived.
leather jacket, I mean, he's just done a book on ultras and he wouldn't say yes to anyone, but he came from Parma to just do this interview because of his connection with it. And it's these, I think like now we've built up enough of kind of a base of respect from respected journalists themselves who are like, okay, yeah, I'm part of something legitimate here. And so I think it's a case of finding great interviews, contacts, fixes, and just, it's getting easier because of what we've built up now, but that also makes it harder because you want to top each one.
Yeah.
You can't just do a half-assed one anymore.
Yeah.
And that again comes back to somebody's got to be an asshole because you've got to make sure that you've got a responsibility now. People like dedicate. How often are people giving an hour away to a YouTube channel these days? Not often. Our attention spans are getting shorter and shorter.
Or if they do, they're doing it 20 different videos in the hour, right?
Yeah, exactly. So therefore, like we owe it to you. Like if you're going to trust, and also these things aren't cheap. It costs Copa a lot of money to make these. And
can I ask you how much money it costs you?
A bit. It's a bit. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Like it's not a lot. Like it's. I don't know. How much do you think it's worth? That cost?
I have no idea. I mean, presumably it's including your flights and your accommodation and stuff. And are you renting the gear?
No, we've got our own gear.
No, you will have their own gear. So probably not a huge amount, right? How long are you there for? Like with the Berlin one, how long were you there?
10 days, and then we return for 2 days.
You got to think
freelancers. I paid for that. Freelancers, it's a bit. It's about 10 grand.
Yeah.
An episode, and that there's absolutely. That's what I said to everyone as well. Everyone's like, there's no profit. That's £10,000 loss. Like, there's no brands connected to it.
You're not making that back.
Yeah. Even if I think how many million people would have to watch an episode to make 10 grand off?
No. If 1 million people watch,
I'm saying how many million would have to watch it to get 10 grand back?
Maybe 100 million, maybe more. People think that there's money in YouTube views. There's no, way less than that. And we have a good rate. No, we don't make money off views. Views don't make money, but you build a respect and a reputation, and you can work with other stuff. We consult with clubs and help out. But the point is, like,
and I reckon if you had 6 million,
you
might make that back. Between 6 to 7 million, you make that back.
No, I don't think so.
Particularly the length. You get those unskippable ads in the middle there, Ellie.
But we don't put ads in the middle.
I'm just teasing.
Well, Copa and I also appreciate and respect the kind of. They've never kind of asked us to brand anything or put anything. It's always been like because they understand that we're working with supporters who don't want that to be part of things that are branded. at times, especially something like about their rivalry. So we respect that. We make no profit. We make pure loss from that. But it's because we're doing something for the culture. We're celebrating the culture.
What do you guys do between episodes of Derby Days? I mean, presumably that's what you're best known for at Copa 90. What are you doing in between seasons? What else are you working on?
Well, he's got his great show, The Price Of, you've seen.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, The Price Of was the thing. I mean, I do obviously, I curate Copa 90 stories. Mm-hmm. So, working on all the other story ideas that kind of go up on there, finding the showcases that work, and then sort of helping the guys fixing whatever new big projects we have coming up. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so there's some kind of interesting, more longer form stuff in the pipeline.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Very much in development.
Yeah. Great. What about you?
Well, it's never really like a normal day in the office. Like right now I'm working on a new idea for a new series.
Cool.
Which is the idea of someone else. Before that, I mean, I went to the US for kind of a brand USA tourism video with 2 other people. Before that, I was in New York for a derby thing, which was different. It was like a branded thing, but
one thing that's really fun with Copa 90 stories that I would be very keen to plug to the Tifo Football audience is the creator commissions and the minis.
Yeah.
So
what are they?
So we have these micro budgets. To make kind of little stories, particularly the creator commissions are £1,000 budgets. If you just go to Copa 90/creator commissions,
so it can be 25% as good as Ellie's original video, right?
I mean, it's the first foray, and obviously you're not expected to make an hour-long piece of content in a foreign country with 4 camera operators.
But it's not about
something
the money.
locally to your space, but it's about what that does to kind of build people and like find these new creators. I mean, we talked about someone like Diego Crespo, who I mentioned, or Karim in the case of Berlin, or Pepe in the case of Argentina, right? There are these characters that end up being, or Santi, right, who end up being so important, so formative to what we do and how we can do those derby days. But there's also the question of like, how do you continue working with that person? Or clearly that person's expressed an ambition into working in football media, so what can you do?
Yeah.
So many of those commissions have come from those people.
Right.
And so it's the space to apply and make these creator commissions from Santi, who was one of our fixers in Argentina, doing something about Juan Sebastian Verón, to Diego doing something about a photographer at Feyenoord.
There's a guy called Adrian from Canada. He went up north to the indigenous community, the Inuits, did a thing on football and depression and how it's helping people. That's gotten so popular now that's
out already. I've seen that one.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And he was just a creator. Emailed one of us with a story idea. He'd already auditioned for the stuff in the past, and that's done so well. Now he is the main videographer for the CPL, the new Canadian League. He did all their awards. It's a big deal. He's big. He's doing some big things. The Canadian Soccer Federation.
Yeah, they've led to some really cool things for people. So
we found some amazing
Maher
people.
Mazahi in Algeria just won an award for reporting, and then the one that Danny Sayers worked on being a gay footballer also won an award here locally in the UK. So it's really trying to move also in empowering other people to get to do kind of this dream experience that Ellie and I get to do week in and week out.
So people can apply for that?
100%.
Where do they go?
It's copa90.com/creator commissions.
Okay.
And just come apply. I mean, it's the best way, I guess, to form these relationships and get people moving and get us going to these different locations or building out these stories. Like, very rarely do we just go and work with someone. It's little steps that come through a mini doc here, a little piece of social content there, a creator commission here, and these relationships kind of build and they become kind of fruitful ways that someone has a platform to then go tell interesting football stories and occasionally have a way with working with Copa 90, and Copa 90 gets to present a much greater depth and breadth of content around the world.
Great. Hey, one last question. If there was if money was no object and you had as much time as you wanted to, what would you make?
I'd make a feature film, but not about football.
Right, okay, fair enough. Have you got your ideas already?
Yeah, I mean, I got into film. I'm a film student, so football's not my only kind of love and passion.
Are you writing?
Am I writing? No. I will, once in the future.
You want to be a director?
Yeah, 100%. I am a director, but
no, I mean, but in feature films.
Feature films, yeah, I'd love to. No, if I could make any documentary, the one I've been telling everyone right now, the story I'm fascinated by is Canada. I'd love to follow Canada over the next qualifying series and just it's the most bizarre nation that is just so abysmal that they can't even make the final round of qualifying, let alone the World Cup. It's a rich multicultural country with 3 successful MLS clubs, a huge women's team, a huge football audience, and they are literally, Alphonso Davies are buying and literally They can't even make it to the final stage. Not the. I was on another podcast, but I'd love to follow Canada for the next 2 years as they try and qualify and just like document what is going on in this bizarre place.
Also, Canada's great, right? So living there for 2 years would be fantastic.
Yeah. And if not that, I would probably I've always wanted to do Saint Etienne Lyon Derby days, but that's like I want to do it when it's perfect. I want to do it when it's the French Cup final.
Right.
Where it decides a league or relegation.
When it matters, right.
When it's like...
relegation, Champions League spot at least. Yes. But even that is
something like it has... When both teams can go, because obviously away fans are banned in France because of the draconian laws against fans over there.
All the money in the world, I would see if I could attend 365 football matches in 365 days in every country on Earth.
Okay, crikey.
Would be...
Really?
That's a lot of work, man.
Another one I would really want to do is the Great Russian Away Day. So one of the league matches between like Kaliningrad and Vladivostok in the second division, and do the great like 2-week away day on like local Russian regional trains. I still have a lot of nostalgia from my time at the World Cup. And I suppose those are two of the big ones. In terms of derbies that I would look at really wanting to do, Peñarol Nacional is the one that, to me, is the big one. I mean, if you look at just the origin of why we call supporter hincha, it's because this little old man on Nacional in the early 1900s was the guy blowing up the balls, and his passion was so great that hinchador became the guy who actually celebrates football. Like, you can get to the origin and basis of why people got excited and fans started going to the stadium, referencing Eduardo Galeano.
It's pretty exciting.
Get out of town, guys. It'd be amazing.
I think that says a lot of the ideas we originally came up with. Mine was telling stories, but yours were experiences. I think that says a lot about why the combination works so well. He's like, he wants to go to Russia away. I'm like, nah, I'm happy to tell the story. Let someone, it's already happened. I'm too old for that shit. He's like, no, let's get on the train with them. I'm like, let's talk about them.
Creating that moment.
And someone else film it. And where's the nearest past the show ice cream store?
Hey, well, that's a full circle right there, back to the ice cream store. Eddie and Martino, thanks so much for coming in, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
Keep doing what you're doing. I've been enjoying
amazing stuff, by the way. Tifo.
Hey, thanks.
It's seminal resource.
Lovely.
Definitely.
Thanks very much. Well, hopefully we'll have you guys back in the future. And
love to.
Pleasure.
Cheers. See you again soon.
Thanks, man.